Greetings, everyone. Welcome to GK 101's another session. So, we are back with a very important session on how to give mocks like a pro. So, mocks are basically the real life experiments. So, whatever theories, whatever strategies you come across, and whatever you plan out for your main examination, mocks are a way of testing them out, of putting them in practice. Right? So, जब एक युद्ध करने जाते हो तो उसके पहले आप रणनीति या कूटनीति बनाते हो आप. तो मॉक्स वही भूमिका निभाती है इधर. तो चलते हैं हम लोग देखते हैं मॉक्स को कैसे प्रो की तरह अटेम्प्ट कर सकें. To give a short introduction about myself, I'm Omkaar Pattanayak. I secured an All India rank of 188 in CLAT 2022 and an All Odisha rank of 2. And I'll be joining the West Bengal National University of Juridical Sciences, KOLKATA. So that's enough about me. Proceeding with the next slide. Right. So the name of this session is Mock It Till You Make It. So in the common parlance, we have a saying called fake it till you make it. इधर मॉक्स करने हैं एंड मॉक्स को ऐसे लेना है कि you get a degree of proficiency in mocks till you make it in the final examination. So on a personal note, when we talk about stages of attempting a mock, that's the first part of the session. I'll share a personal experience. The first mock which I attempted offline, I got a very dismal score of 51.75, and that's when I thought कि कुछ future aspects नहीं है, there weren't any future avenues for me, and I went on to the lens of thinking CLAT wasn't meant for me. So that's a mistake a lot of us commit. So it's the first mock you're giving out there, completely crude, unprepared about the layout of the paper. You're absolutely uncomfortable with the way the paper has been drafted. And then the consortium out there, they have put some efforts into preparing a paper which will be challenging for some 70, 80,000 people who are attempting the examination, right? So taking that into consideration, in your first mocks, they might not know might not go as great as you're expecting. Learn to take mock scores slightly. Learn to take mock scores with a pinch of salt because they're barely reflective of what might happen in the main examination. So yeah, mocks are a stepping stone to doing well in the examinations, but then mocks are not an end in themselves. So I would rather categorize attempting mocks into stages, starting with the first stage, Prishtbhumi. So Prishtbhumi literally, it's a Hindi and a Sanskrit term. So Prishtbhumi literally means foundation, right? So for the first few mocks, what you would do is you would establish a foundation for yourself. You would get comfortable with the pattern. You would get to know कि consortium exactly करा क्या रहा है, ये exam किस चीजों को test कर रहा है. So firstly, ice breaking, as I explained it earlier. Impromptu attempts, light preparation. So we don't expect you to go in with very fancy strategies the first time you go and attempt a mock. आराम से lightly prepare करके जाओ. Impromptu attempts तो एक सेक्शन पकड़ा है, अपने सेक्शन को खत्म करो, जैसे जैसे आगे क्वेश्चन आ रहे वैसे वैसे अटेम्प्ट करते रहो. Don't try to complicate your attempt over there with a lot of things, with a lot of preconceived notions. Surface level assessment. What does this mean literally? Surface level assessment is कि आप ऊपर ऊपर से समीक्षा कर रहे हो, ऊपर ऊपर से देख रहे हो कि आपने क्या किया exactly. You try to assess the attempt you give. So a very important part of giving a mock is assessing your attempts, right? So you're given an examination, you're done, you get a question का answer की मिलता है आपको. You check the answer key, you check the explanations out there, you correlate that with the thoughts that you were having in mind while giving the examination. And that's how you get a surface level assessment. So don't go too deep into that. ऊपर से देखो, like where you went wrong, where you could have done better. Some places where you committed a few silly mistakes out there, some low-hanging fruits which you missed out. So that's what surface level assessment is all about. Ideation on a basal strategy. Now that you know what the examination is about, now that you know about the 5 sections, the sort of questions that turn up over there, and while it's too early to exactly decide on what your strengths and weaknesses are, but you still get a preliminary idea of what exactly is your calling. So on the basis of that, you can come up with a small, very, very simplistic strategy for the upcoming mocks. So you can ideate about that. That's a very dynamic process that continues throughout mocks. So a strategy is something which might strike you to the last, just before the examination, maybe. So in my case, I had a plan B. I had to put it into action during the day of the examination because the quant section was against the expectations and GK was completely out of expectations. So that is something which is, I would call it very beautiful about CLAT. You can't actually go ahead with a lot of planning and preparation and a lot of preparation beforehand. So you get an opportunity to use your presence of mind, to use your composure on the spot and come up with something effective which will distinguish you from the rest. So yeah, ideation and a basic strategy. Dry runs. Dry runs are all about basically whatever strategies you come across, whatever strategies you come up with, whatever strategies you ideate, putting them into action and putting them relentlessly into action because that requires a level of perseverance. So the results, they won't be immediate, but then you'll surely see an upward trajectory or a downward trajectory for the matter of fact. So that's where you analyze some things which are meant for you. For example, let's say you're not a very proficient person with quants, and you've seen that when you start a mock with quants, you tend to get demoralized, and that's what spoils the rest of the mock for you. So that's when you take a call and you decide a different strategy. So how would you decide that? That's through dry runs. So approach mocks in a very scientific manner. You must have studied about concepts such as averages, सच एज मीन मीडियन एंड मोड, तो उनको थोड़ा यहाँ पे प्रैक्टिकली अप्लाई करके देखो कि ठीक है, यहाँ पे मैंने 5 मॉक्स दिए हैं, 5 में से मैंने मीन में देखा है कि मैंने इतने मॉक्स मैंने स्टार्ट किए थे, लेट्स से विद क्वांट सेक्शन और जीके सेक्शन, मेरे मॉक्स उतने अच्छे नहीं गए. लेट मी ट्राई अ मॉक विथ लीगल सेक्शन से स्टार्ट करके या फिर इंग्लिश सेक्शन से स्टार्ट करके. So when you do that in the dry runs, that's when you get to understand ki what are your strong points, what are your weaknesses, and how can you exactly work on them. Execution, right? Another word for the dry runs, execution is basically putting in concerted efforts and executing the whole of the plan over there, the 5 pointers over there, putting them all into action in a concerted format and maintaining a checklist. So whenever you attempt a mock, देखो कितने level तक ice breaking हो रहा है, how well you are able to analyze a section. Then impromptu attempts कितने लगाए हैं आपने light preparation के साथ. Surface level assessment कैसा हुआ आपका, कितने क्वेश्चंस करेक्ट जा रहे हैं, कितने इनकरेक्ट जा रहे हैं, अगर नेगेटिव में नहीं जाते वो क्वेश्चंस, इनकरेक्ट नहीं जाते तो कितना स्कोर करते हैं आप, which you generally get with the mocks you attempt. If you attempt them online or even if they get uploaded somewhere, like the answer key comes online or the score comes online, you get that assessment generally. But in case that's not happening, I would recommend you to do that yourself. So maybe open an Excel sheet and put the data over there, and then you can tabulate your findings. Basis strategy, as I explained it previously, and the dry runs. So this is the indispensable part of the Prishtbhumi stage 1 strategy for mocks. You build a nice foundation, you build a strong foundation, and then you take it forward. Right. So I'll take a minute to talk about the Super 15 mentorship batch that has been provided by NLSIU students for aspirants aiming for the top college. So GK 101 has come up with this wonderful course which can basically provide you an opportunity to interact with NLSIU students and get complete personal guidance for CLAT and AILET 2024. And these are a few merits out there. So you can take a screenshot of this if you would like. So personal mentorship for only 15 students. So you'll have to, of course, qualify some sort of a screening. Then weekly one-to-one Zoom sessions with your mentor, 24/7 doubt clearing group, personalized weekly schedules and targets, daily GK quiz. So these are the wonderful deliverables from our end, and that's something you would surely want to take a note of. And of course, a few ranks out there. So people who have been associated with us out there and your mentors themselves. So the distinguished ranks they have held. So the course fees, the scholarships we're offering. So this is a golden opportunity, and I would surely recommend you take care of it. Furthermore, if you want me to be your mentor, and you want to make sure to secure a position in one of the top NLUs, so you could use this code OP30 while enrolling, as well as you have the contact details down there. So feel free to reach out to us in case of any queries. And of course, we would love to be a part of this journey, and we would love to help you succeed in your dreams. So continuing with our session, Samiksha or Sarvekshan, stage 2. Samiksha is assessment, Sarvekshan is surveying, right, in literal sense. So mock-oriented preparation. Now that you know what mocks are, and how exactly the structure of the examination is, you can start preparing some consolidated patterns, some consolidated approach towards preparation. When you initially attempt mocks, you tend to go very broad and diverse with the sources you're referring to. For example, let's say GK. So you refer to a variety of compendiums, you read a variety of facts and stuffs which might or might not be very relevant to the examination. But then that's very essential to know exactly the foundational values that you require. But now, as you enter stage 2, and this I would believe would be the 10th or the 11th mock you're attempting. So 10th, 11th mock onwards, आप stage 2 में enter कर जाओगे. तब आप लोगों को एक जायजा कर लेना है, तब आपको एक समीक्षा कर लेनी है कि आपका एग्जाम जो है वो किन किन चीजों को कवर करता है. So you need not cover 3-4 years पुराना current affairs. You can limit yourselves to the last 6-7 months or maybe 8 months, right? So, and again, when you talk about mocks generally cover the current affairs of the last 3-4 months. What I've observed with the mocks I've given. So currently on a short term, what you can do is you can strengthen that part of GK over there with mock oriented preparation. When it comes to legal, when it comes to English, try to do away with the lessons that you have already finished. For example, basics agar aapne clear kar liya, contracts, torts and other concepts out there. Try solving mock sets, try solving passages out there in the CLAT format, right? So that is mock oriented prep. Quant ke case mein, clear all the foundational topics, time and work, distance, speed, time, यूनिटरी वैल्यू जो कि आप यूनिटरी मेथड जो आपने सीखा था क्लास 5th 6th 7th 8th में, सो उन फाउंडेशनल टॉपिक्स को क्लियर कर लो बिकॉज दे विल अगेन एंड अगेन फीचर इन मॉक्स. There are some questions which are very low hanging fruits in the quant section, something which people don't exactly encash a lot of times because of their apprehension towards quant. For example, the graph based questions. So they're very easy. They're generally very easy questions out there, and they require some basic amount of arithmetic knowledge and some Vedic mathematics if you want to put it in a fancy way. So it's very much doable in a 15 minutes time span, something I'll cover later in the session. So what you can do is you can try to target those questions out there. अगर कुछ नहीं हो रहा है तो उन चीजों को आप साइड में रख सकते हो प्रिपेयर करने के लिए, बट जो स्ट्रेंथ्स है उनको कंसोलिडेट करो. क्रिटिकल एनालिसिस ऑफ ईच मॉक. नाउ दिस इज डिफरेंट फ्रॉम द प्रीवियस वाला जो मैंने असेसमेंट बोला था. क्रिटिकल एनालिसिस ब्रिंग्स यू टू एन एक्सटेंट कि आप उसी मॉक को वापस सॉल्व कर रहे हो, उसके उसके जैसा ही रहेगा आपका सेशन. सो अगर आपने 2 घंटा लगा एक मॉक सॉल्व करने के लिए, एक मॉक को फिनिश करने के लिए, you need to spend at least some 2 hours, 30 minutes to 3 hours more scattered across the week. So you have, let's assume you're attempting one mock in a week or maybe two. So what you can do is you can allocate some 6-7 hours in a week to analyzing mocks. So it's as good as you're taking up a section. You're devoting some 15-20 minutes to solving that, and you solve all the questions over there, including the ones that you got correct, so that you're affirmed. Like there are some questions which you might have gotten correct by the fluke. So you get an idea of the explanation out there and your gut feel, like how much you can trust your gut feel out there. So that's another component of the critical analysis, to solve solve every question again out there. Look at the explanations thoroughly. If you have any doubts, reach out to the mentors in the group. Don't let it stay pending out there. And look out for similar questions. Maybe have a comparative analysis of the previous 10-15 mocks you're given. So वहां पे similar questions जो आ रहे हैं, for example, there's a question from, let's say, time, speed, and distance, and you have been getting questions wrong for the first 5 mocks, and then the succeeding 5 mocks you're getting them fairly correct. So prepare a graph sort of thing for that. That trajectory will help you analyze and evaluate your progress in that topic. Because whenever you do questions from a particular booklet, you do them in a very leisurely manner. Quant का एक सेट है, आपने अलग से किया एक बुक से, तो उन सेट्स को जब आप करोगे, आप एक लीजरली मैनर में करोगे. यू माइट नॉट टाइम योरसेल्फ, यू माइट टेक ब्रेक्स, यू माइट बी इन अ डिफरेंट सेट ऑफ माइंड, यू वोंट हैव 10 सेक्शंस टू जगल विद, राइट? बट व्हेन यू डू इट इन अ मॉक, इट्स अ डिफरेंट सिचुएशन. यू हैव 5 सेक्शंस आउट देयर, उसमें से एक सेक्शन शायद गंदा गया होगा, तो उसका प्रेशर है, एंड दैट माइट मेक योर क्वांट सेक्शन गो बैड, बिकॉज क्वांट रिक्वायर्स अ स्टेबिलिटी ऑफ माइंड. So your calculations might go wrong. You might make silly mistakes with multiplication and division. So you need to evaluate कि वहां पे आपका stability of mind कैसा है and composure कैसा है. So one good way of doing it, one empirical way of doing it, is through critical analysis of each mock. Coming to legal and English, how many times did you misread a question? How many times did you take on, like you had the correct option in the mind, but you circled the OMR in the wrong way? So these are the things which come out, which get exposed during the critical analysis. Else mock scores are just a number out there. So you won't know you're deserving 70 or 80 out there. Might be आपने 80 marks का सोच के सही दिया होगा, but आपने गलती से OMR सही से कर लिया, and you get a score of 90 out there. So the only way of knowing your real progress out there is through critical analysis of mocks. Exit polls and swift ideation. Well, exit polls is a fancy way of putting it. As a politics geek out there, I used to call the tallying of answers exit polls. तो जब मैं एक मॉक फिनिश करता था, व्हाट आई यूज्ड टू डू इज आई यूज्ड टू टिक मार्क द क्वेश्चंस के साथ में मैं आंसर्स वहीं पे टिक मार्क कर देता था क्वेश्चन बुकलेट में, एंड आई यूज्ड टू कंपेयर दैट विद द आंसर की व्हिच वाज गिवन टू मी, एंड देन आई यूज्ड टू टेक आउट द एग्जिट पोल्स की सपोज 150 सीट्स हैं, तो मैं कितने सीट सिक्योर कर रहा हूँ, कितने सीट नेगेटिव में जा रहे हैं, टोटल ओवरऑल मेरा स्कोर कितना आ रहा है. सो वो एक बहुत ही अच्छा प्रैक्टिस जो कि मुझे हेल्प किया, एंड दैट इज समथिंग व्हिच हेल्प माय फ्रेंड्स आउट देयर एज वेल. They had the scores with them before the scores were actually released, because there's a 1 week 2 week gap jab scores release hote hain generally in most of the mocks. So what happens is you don't get enough time to ideate and prepare, because the next mock tab tak aa gaya hota hai aapka agla wala mock, and you don't really have much idea kya ho raha hai. But when you do this, when you take out exit polls, you get a fair idea ki aapne itna score kiya hai, where you went wrong, and immediately you can actually tally the explanations. It's fresh in your mind, right? The biggest thing is it's fresh in your mind, so you get to know कि ठीक है यहाँ पे मैंने मिस्टेक्स किए हैं, एंड मेरा मूड आज अच्छा नहीं था, मैंने थोड़ा impulsively कर लिया. So these are the things I'll take care of the next time. But when you keep it piling over there, that's when you realize that like this was okay, like why did I get wrong over here? So you don't analyze, you don't empathize with your own state of mind when you attempted that mock. So that's why exit polls are important. ये निकालो कि this is a very good practice. This will ensure a degree of enthusiasm, a degree of competitive spirit in you towards the whole thing, because CLAT preparation is a long journey. So to keep chugging all the way around and to enjoy the process, you need to have such competitive elements out there. Treat this like a video game. So you need to have a high score every time you attempt it. And then maybe if you're into trading and into stocks and marketing, treat this like an investment. So every time you make an investment, you very eagerly follow the return on investment, right? So maybe treat mocks the same way. Swift ideation. So you have come up with a problem out there, come up with solutions immediately. ठीक है, जीके का सेक्शन गंदा गया. There were 5 questions on G20, मैंने एक भी नहीं किया. So okay, fine. For the next time, I'll have G20 in my list. I'll complete G20. इसको मैं miss नहीं करूंगा. For the last three marks, I'm getting questions on, let's say, Chat GPT, or let's say some other topic, the Odisha train incident. So I've not been able to attempt these questions continuously. So that's something I take care of, and I put it in my to-do list. So don't procrastinate out there. And this is something I'm saying from personal experience, because there have been mocks where I've gotten the same questions wrong over and over again due to my laziness, due to my lethargy. So that is one place I would tell you to put some extra efforts into: swift ideation and exit polls. Extensive experimentation. Stage 2 mocks है आपके. The next 10, 15, 20 mocks, I would put it in months until August के September रख दो. अगस्त सितंबर अक्टूबर तक आप ये रख सकते हो समीक्षा सर्वेक्षण वाला स्टेज. तो यहाँ पे आपको बहुत इनपुट्स आएंगे. कोई बोलेगा कि एक साथ सारे सेक्शंस जैसे जैसे वैसे अटेम्प्ट करके जाओ. इंग्लिश करो, उसके बाद लीगल जाओ, उसके बाद जीके, उसके बाद लॉजिकल रीजनिंग, उसके बाद क्वांट. कोई बोलेगा जंबल करके सेक्शन अटेम्प्ट करो. कोई बोलेगा पहले सेक्शन के पहले पैराग्राफ को फिनिश कर लो, उसके बाद keep jumbling out over there. So there are a lot of inputs you'll receive from your mentors, from your friends, from your teachers, and you yourself will come up with a lot of fanciful ideas. So how would you know which is effective for you? Because what might be tailor-made for me might not be effective, might not be very efficient for you. So to know that, you need to do extensive experimentation. This is another way of just spinning what was there in the stage 1, but in a more concerted and a more larger scale. So over here, what you do is you attempt both CLAT and AILET mocks together, and you compare the effectiveness of each attempt. So if there's a strategy which is working for AILET, in my case, if I speak from my perspective, there's a less likelihood that it would be effective for me as well, right? Because AILET requires you to have a speed run. CLAT requires you to have an upper level assessment of things. Sorry, AILET requires you to have an upper level assessment of things. So that's reflected in the GK as well. That's reflected in the other sections as well. So you basically need to pick the best questions you can attempt. You can't attempt all the questions out over there with the time constraint. With CLAT, there's a chance that you can attempt a larger number of questions, and you need to go a bit more into detail. So there's a divergence of strategies out there, clearly, which is something I can point out. But that might not be the case with you. So do extensive experimentation out there and try to realize your calling. Tabulation and correlation of progress. सपोज आपने पहले वाले स्टेज में, यानी कि पृष्ठभूमि में, आपने टैबुलेशन और कोरिलेशन नहीं किया होगा, because I assume a few of you might have already started giving mocks and you must be well into your 10th, 15th mocks. So I would suggest summation सर्वेक्षण में कर लो, because this is indispensable. So unless you have Excel sheets, unless you maintain graphs, it's not really very effective to go about giving mocks. So I didn't do that myself, and that's something I regret, because अगर मैं करता तो I would have had a more informed decision making capacity. And that is something I would recommend to you as a mentor. Have your results tabulated, maintain a very close watch on how your trajectory is going. That would help you locate any mistakes you're committing. Sashakti-karan or Sanshodhan, the penultimate stage. So this would be approximately 1 month to 15 days before your final examination. Sashakti-karan is all about strengthening yourself. Sanshodhan is all about research. Penultimate stage, यानी कि last stage के पहले वाला stage. Cumulative assessment. By now, I assume you must have given at least 30 to 35 mocks. तो उसमें आइडेंटिफाई कर लो अपने लूप होल्स, बिकॉज बाय नाउ इट्स टाइम यू नो योर स्ट्रेंथ्स एंड वीकनेसेस. अगर क्वांट मेरा नहीं हो रहा है, बहुत प्रैक्टिसेस करने के बाद, बहुत चीजें मतलब बहुत एफर्ट्स डालने के बाद, दैट्स व्हेन यू अंडरस्टैंड दैट क्वांट इज नॉट समथिंग व्हिच इज माय कॉलिंग एंड आई बेटर स्ट्रेंथन माय अदर सेक्शंस. Also, if there are particular topics within quant which are fairly manageable, so I work on strengthening those topics. So what you can do is you can identify those loopholes in a very specific and then in a very sectional manner. Legal में suppose you're having issues with, let's say, international law or arbitration, litigation, and other topics out there. So that's when you understand where you're going wrong and you try to work on those topics. Mitigation of loopholes, again, just the continuation of that. Withstanding the corrigible ones. So of course, a few things, they won't ever get changed. So I understand all of that. But then try to work and strengthen your weaknesses, your weak points as much as possible, because you never know. That might look like a very big thing to do out there. Time and distance might look like a very complicated topic, but once you get the formula and the cracks and the tricks out there, you can very well ace it and you can score a 5 or a 10 very easily. Designating your troops. So when we had the Mahabharata war happening, we had three categories of troops: Maharathis, Atirathis, and Rathis. So putting Maharathis over there, topics which function as your key strengths, right? So Karna, Bhishma, all of these key leaders, all of these key initiative takers in the war, they were termed as Maharathis. तो आपको अपने कर्ण, भीष्म, अर्जुन, इन सबको आपको आइडेंटिफाई करना है. मेरे केस में मेरा लीगल मेरा मेरा भीष्म था. My English was my Karna. So that's what you need to do. You need to identify your key strengths and उन पे आप कम time दे के you can focus on your Atirathis and Rathis. Atirathis, some topics which need basic brush up, right? For example, critical reasoning, it's a section which is a nightmare for a lot of people, but with a few basic concepts, you can get them right. So strengthening and weakening of arguments, that's a topic which a lot of people have confusion about. So that's something which would require basic brush up, and you can get that done through online sessions, through the sessions that we're organizing, through doubt clearing, through basic reading. So you can designate that under Rathis. In case of Rathis, मेरे case में quant, I wasn't very proficient in quants, so that is something which requires significant work, and that is not something you should abandon because CLAT is a sum total, it's a function of all the sections out there. So you never know which section might uplift you. So that's all about Sasaktikaran and Sansojan, the penultimate stage. Coming to the third point out there, mapping and attempt engineering. I'll elaborate that in the next section. Setting up standards for each section. So when you know कि आपके कौन से section strong है, that's when you get an understanding कि किन sections पे कितना time invest करना है and कितने efforts invest करना है. For example, talking about quant again. So that's where you set up a standard कि मेरे को 5 से 10 के range में रखना है score. So that's something realistic and you can work towards that goal. Evaluation of difficulty and competitiveness of each mock. Now there are different varieties of mocks you'll get. So some mocks might be very easy and a lot of people will get a good score out there. So you might end up getting a score of 100, 115. So that's nothing much to, that's something to be happy about for sure, but nothing much to be emphatic about because that won't get you an admission into any NLU. So bear that in mind that if you're doing badly in the mock, that doesn't mean you won't do good in the main examination, or if you're doing wonderfully in a mock, that would guarantee a very wonderful attempt in CLAT as well. So this is just a mock scenario out there. Take it literally when you talk about a mock. And that's when you evaluate the difficulty, because when you give a mock, you'll understand कि ठीक है ये थोड़ा difficult था बाकी mock से comparison में. So accordingly you evaluate it and accordingly you decide the future course of action. Mapping progress in a realistic sense. Now you're getting a 17 a mock this time. You can't expect to get a 120 the next mock, the very next mock with the same difficulty level. So अगर आप progress को map कर रहे हो उसको एक realistic sense में करो, set realistic targets. Don't go over the board. So that's about Sashактikaran and Sanshodhan. That's an end to it. Shankhnath, the final stage. So the clarion call when you gear up for the mock, the last 10, 15 days before the examination, or maybe a week. In my case, all of these phases, all of these stages, they were all clumped up in the last 14 days. So that's one thing you should learn from me. Don't keep up your things for the last minute. Slowly and steadily prepare karo throughout the year. Don't get burnt out like me towards the end. Engineering the final strategy. Now it's time you get to the drawing board. एक strategy बना दो आप अच्छे से कि ठीक है, I'll attempt it in this sequence. मैं पहले ये पकड़ूंगा कि पहले मैं इंग्लिश से स्टार्ट करूंगा, then I'll go with quant. क्वांट में मैं एक सेट अटेम्प्ट करने के बाद लॉजिक को आ जाऊंगा, लॉजिक के मैं दो सबसे इजी सेट्स अटेम्प्ट करने के बाद लीगल को जाऊंगा, लीगल पूरा फिनिश करूंगा, जी के 5 मिनट्स में मैं रैप अप करूंगा एंड देन आई गो बैक टू द रिमेनिंग सेट्स ऑफ क्वांट. स्प्रूसिंग अप द इन्वेंटरी. कुछ कुछ चीजें हैंडी रखो, फॉर्मूले, all the basic concepts of legal, though they don't require prior legal knowledge in CLAT, but still have some concepts ready out there so you can do speed reading. Talking about English, vocabulary ready rakho. Maybe if you can do something, you can do something right now. Word power made by normal use abhi se karna start kar lo, but don't keep it for the last minute. So yeah, that's another thing you can work on. Critical reasoning, brush up your concepts. Setting up a factory for plans, plan A to plan N तक. Plan पे plan बनाने के लिए ready रहो. If you are seeing कि कुछ अगर conducive नहीं है, for example in my case, the GK section was a quizer's dream, so somehow I somehow aced it, but quant was completely unexpected. So what I did was I decided to devote a max of 10 minutes. मैंने देखा एक set solve नहीं हो रहा है, एक question हो गया, I immediately decided to devote the rest 5 minutes to the other sections. So that is something which requires some steadfastness, and that's what you can do when you have a factory for plans. Embodying composure, patience, perseverance, CPP. This is the most essential part of giving CLAT. So when they test you, they test your composure, patience, and perseverance alongside your knowledge of the topic, of the subject, right? So that's what you require for becoming a good lawyer as well. Polishing the armory, basically brushing up whatever you have done, putting it in a romanticized way. And yes, having trust and belief in yourself, maybe listen to some pep talk, to some motivational stuff, and you're all good to go. Part 2 of the session, Raniti, engineering a mock attempt. This in particular is very important when you go about attempting a mock, because मैंने वहाँ पे overall एक outline दे दिया है. But when you go over there, when you attempt a mock, how do you exactly go about it from the first time till the last mock you give? If you talk about a sectional distribution of marks and an ideal time allocation, right? So this is a predicted format for 2024, CLAT 2024, sorry, 2023, CLAT 2023, and we don't have any details on AILET yet. So what has happened is they've reduced the number of questions from 150 to 120. So on a safer side, to average out the impact, we have deducted 5 questions from each section. So instead of 30, you'll have 25 in English, 35 in legal, 30 in GK and current affairs, 25 in critical reasoning, and 10 in quantitative aptitude. The original time allocation was +5, इन सब के साथ ऐड कर लोगे, so total 110 minutes हो रहा था. You have 120 minutes in your hand, so you have a 10 minutes का surplus. What I have done over here is I've assumed कि difficulty level same ही रह रहा है सारे questions का, which is highly unlikely. But still, if I assume that on a safer side, then in that case, I've reduced just 5 minutes from each section. So you attempt all the questions in a total of 90 minutes over there, and you have a 30 minutes का surplus. Now this 30 minutes का surplus आप रख लो वहाँ पे अपने questions को verify करने के लिए, कुछ अगर आपने छोड़ा है उनको वापस revisit करने के लिए. It's highly unlikely कि ये distribution work करेगा in the reality sense, because we don't have the distribution from CLAT consortium, and also we don't have an idea on the difficulty level of the questions. So might be the paragraphs might get a bit more tough and difficult. In that case, 20 minutes might not be enough for English, or 30 might not be enough for legal. One section where you can optimize time, GK and current affairs, so I would highly recommend उसको 5-10 minutes में wrap up करने का try करो. I had a threshold of always wrapping up GK in the first 5 minutes, because you don't even need to read the paragraph in most of the times. But yes, develop a habit of speed reading. That will surely take you places. Changes in accordance to the recent 2024 notice. So disclaimer, ज़्यादा खुश होने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. I've just talked about the whole thing over there. तो मैंने बस यहाँ पे आप देख सकते हो. You can take a screenshot of this and you'll get this on the CLAT consortium का website as well. Some general observations, no major changes. Mocks as experiments, moderation and diversification. Right, एक type के mocks attempt मत करो, attempt a diversity of mocks. Sectional tests attempt करो as a building block for the whole thing. And right, attempting unattempted questions. So all the questions that you leave unattempted, make sure to attempt them back again, and get thorough, get comfortable with them. So in further pursuance of the previous slides, कुछ underrated नुस्खे. So जब भी आप जाते हो कि कोई गेम खेलते हो, कुछ भी करते हो, even if you fight a war or if you fight a small game, if you have a small game something, there are some tricks and tips of the game. So ऐसे कुछ underrated नुस्खे हैं जो कि generally बहुत लोग बोलते हैं, but आप उसको implement नहीं करते हो. Speed read, this is indispensable. And how to go about it? Firstly, you don't need to read each and every word out there that's there in the passage. So if you understand a synopsis, if you get an essence of what the passage is all about, that's when you're good to go with the questions. तो आपका मोटिव ये नहीं कि आप वहां पे जाके उस पैसेज को एंजॉय करो. फॉर दैट यू कैन हैव अ नाइस बुक ओवर देयर एंड यू कैन रीड इट ड्यूरिंग योर वेकेशंस. सो स्पीड रीड इज वेरी एसेंशियल, एंड आई विल गिव अ स्मॉल इलस्ट्रेशन ऑफ हाउ टू एग्जैक्टली गो अबाउट इट. अच्छा, बचपन में जब आप कुछ भी बुक पढ़ते थे, व्हेन यू यूज्ड टू रीड योर इंग्लिश टेक्स्ट बुक्स, your teachers must have been very particular with you having a pencil in your hand and underlining, highlighting and bracketing, right? And that must have continued late until let's say 5th and 6th. And अभी भी आप लोग highlight and bracket करते हो, underline करते हो important चीजों को when you prepare for examinations, when you prepare notes. So this is one very important. Keep your ego aside. Take a pencil or pen, जो भी अपने हाथ में पकड़ा है, पकड़ के हर लाइन को underline करो as in when you're reading it, and कुछ important facts and figures आ रहे हैं. For example, let's say 25% of this country is getting submerged due to torrential rains. So उसको आपने underline कर लिया, bracket कर लिया, so that when it resurfaces back in the questions, that's when you have an idea. Because बहुत बार क्या होता है, when you have low hanging fruits over there, बोलेंगे 27% of the country is getting submerged, when you know it's 25. So there's a chance that you think कि ठीक है number है, सही होगा, गलत नहीं होगा, but there are chances when that number might be incorrect, and this is a way of getting it. Pivot and fidget. So any of you must have seen the movie, must have seen the web series Pictures. You know, you must be knowing what pivot is all about. Pivoting is completely changing the direction of what you're doing currently, and fidgeting is वहां पे fidget करते रहना. मतलब अगर आप एक कोर्स में हो, कहीं पे भी स्थिर होके नहीं बैठना. Constantly revolving or rotating around an axis and coming up with a variety of thoughts, being versatile. So खरगोश की फुर्ती, कछुए की लगन. सो अभी कछुआ होने से नहीं चलने वाला है. कछुआ बनोगे तो आप बहुत स्लो हो जाओगे, आपसे बहुत तेज होंगे लोग. खरगोश की फुर्ती रखो, कछुए का डिटर्मिनेशन, कछुए का परसेवरेंस रखो. राइट. सो बी रेडी टू चेंज योर अप्रोचेस. वही जो मैंने प्लान ए से प्लान एन तक का बात किया था, प्लान ए, प्लान बी, प्लान सी, वो बनाते रहो. एंड उसको इमीडिएटली इंप्लीमेंट करने के लिए वो एनर्जी, वो एंथुजियाज्म रखो. कैम 1992 देखा होगा तो रिस्क है तो इश्क है भाई. कुछ क्वेश्चंस को ना रिस्क लेके दो आंसर्स उनका, बिकॉज फॉर एग्जांपल जीके में बहुत हेल्प करता है. इफ यू कम फ्रॉम अ क्विजिंग बैकग्राउंड और इफ यू हैव डन सम ग्राउंड वर्क, यू नो द आंसर्स टू योर पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चंस इवन विदाउट नोइंग द स्पेसिफिसिटी ओवर देयर. कैसे? फॉर एग्जाम्पल there's a question on who's the president of India. Now you don't know who Draupadi Murmu is, or you don't know the answer for the matter of fact, but there are four options out there. One option you're not sure about, three options sure shot incorrect है. एक ऑप्शन में मैं किम जोंग उन डालूंगा, एक में डाल दूंगा बैरक ओबामा, एक में डाल दूंगा ओसामा बिन लादेन. So if you know anything about Osama bin Laden, Barack Obama, or Kim Jong Un, you'll not choose the three of those options, and you'll go for the fourth option. So that's the thing about risk taking. So risks कुछ कुछ जगह पे लेने चाहिए, because there are a lot of questions where you might know the answers, where you might have a gut feeling, and that's when you follow them. So try to get your questions in the sections where you're confident: legal, English, critical. In sections में mark उठाओ. This is the holy triumvirate. So in sections को आप ठीक कर लोगे ना, you'll have a capacity for risk taking over here. So that is something you can focus on. Furthermore, speed read का एक illustration है. वीडियो को पॉज मत करो, अभी देखो यहाँ पे इन पांचों वर्ड्स को देखने का ट्राई करो. There's an inherent spelling mistake in each of the words, and that is very difficult to point out in the first go. For example, आंध्र प्रदेश को आप आंध्र प्रदेश ही पढ़ोगे वहां पे, you won't read it as something different. Reason being, the first and the last letters have not been jumbled up. They're in the perfect place. Onomatopoeia, a lot of you might be confused with the spelling. The spelling is incorrect over here. Please comment the right spelling in the comment section. तो onomatopoeia का यहाँ पे मैंने थोड़ा alignment order change कर लिया, but you'll read it as onomatopoeia. थर्ड क्वेश्चन ओवर देयर, नेशनल लॉ यूनिवर्सिटी. ये सेकंड बार में पकड़ लोगे आप, बट फर्स्ट बार में डजंट मैटर, यू रीड इट एज नेशनल लॉ यूनिवर्सिटी. Paleolithic. This might be a bit difficult for those people who have not read their history lessons very properly or who have not done their word power bit by Norman Lewis. Assassination. 80% people will think this is the correct spelling, but there's a double S over there after A. So what I'm trying to illustrate over here is spelling mistakes ऐसे बहुत common होते हैं, and they might ask you to point out the spelling mistakes. So when you do speed reading out over there, you sort of acclimatize yourself to such errors. You'll immediately pick them up if your English is strong, number one. Second, when you go about reading passages, you won't read each and every word. You won't read off, forever, together with, against, altogether. You won't read individual words over there. You'll read sentences as a whole. So that will reduce the time you will be spending on each passage. एक passage अगर पहली बार में समझ नहीं आ रहा है, just move on. Know the art of letting go. Don't get stuck over there trying to make sense of each and every word, because this is not your school examination. This is a very competitive test. And if you're facing a problem out there, that's something common to all of them. That's speed read ka illustration. Post attempt. Immediately take out the exit polls. Calculate the contribution of each section individually. Make sure to read and question the explanations. Revisit the planning board and lage raho bandhu. So basically a culmination, a conclusion of all the things I've talked about over here. So that is what this post attempt stage is all about, because attempt जितना देने में आप efforts डालते हो, post attempt में उससे थोड़ा ज्यादा डालोगे, then आपका next attempt सही जाएगा. Pulling it off on a concluding note. One, don't get overwhelmed, because that's the biggest enemy you can have during the examination. So a lot of people contemporary to me who were doing equally well in the mocks and the other examinations, they lost the composure in the last moment. I had that moment personally, but somehow I didn't get overwhelmed and I pulled it off. So that's something I would request all of you to do as well, because CLAT हमेशा अनप्रेडिक्टेबल रहेगा. CLAT का पेपर उस दिन सुबह डिसाइड होता है. अगर आप देखोगे तो CLAT के पहले आपको जो मिलता है बेसिक, दैट्स just a prototype sort of thing. And AILET is even more unpredictable because we didn't have sample papers the previous year. So don't get overwhelmed. Treat each mock as if you're giving the examination in person. That will sort of acclimatize the thing. One step at a time. Don't take too many things on your plate at once. एक section target कर रहे हो, एक सेक्शन पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक टारगेट कर रहे हो, टेक इट स्लोली. बाकी चीजें करोगे आप साइमल्टेनियसली, दैट्स देयर फॉर श्योर, बट डोंट बी टू हार्श ऑन योरसेल्फ, नहीं तो यू विल एंड अप बीइंग अ जैक ऑफ ऑल ट्रेड्स, मास्टर ऑफ नन. कीप रिविजिटिंग द प्लानिंग टेबल. एक प्लान बना दिया, वो इंडिया का पार्टीशन प्लान की तरफ फाइनलाइज हो गया, डोंट बी दैट वे. बी वेरी फ्लेक्सिबल विथ योर प्लान्स को क्वेश्चन करो, रीवैल्यूएट करते रहो. थिंक लाइक अ कैलकुलेटिव पॉलिटिशियन और एन एनालिटिकल स्टॉक ब्रोकर. दे कीप ऑन चेंजिंग द थिंग दे पुट देयर एफर्ट्स ऑन. एक पॉलिटिशियन होगा तो एक पर्टिकुलर जगह पे देख रहे, एक पर्टिकुलर सेक्शन से वोट्स नहीं आ रहा है, फॉर एग्जांपल द यूथ इज नॉट वोटिंग फॉर हिम, देन दैट पर्सन इमीडिएटली स्विचेस ऑन टू द ओल्डर पीपल, टू द ओल्डर जनरेशंस. स्टॉक ब्रोकर देख रहा है, इस पर्टिकुलर कंपनी के स्टॉक पे पैसा डाल के मेरा मुनाफा नहीं हो रहा है, I'll immediately change my stocks over there. So be very calculative on that front. Choose your competition wisely. There are a lot of people who might get 120, 113 mocks. Does not mean you'll end up making them the competition. Be competent to yourself. Be competent with yourself. Apologies. So choose your competition wisely. And a lot of times you end up competing with the wrong crowd over there and you set your standards low. So don't do that. Mix just the right amount of confidence. Overconfidence will take you down. Underconfidence, it's a killer. It's a silent killer over there. It will show its very उसका विभत्सपूर्ण रूप आपको एग्जाम के दिन देखने को मिलेगा. सो जस्ट राइट अमाउंट ऑफ कॉन्फिडेंस डाल दो और उसके बाद वॉइला यू आर डन, यू आर ऑल प्रिपेयर्ड फॉर क्लैट. So on that note, I would like to end the session. Thank you very much for being there with me. On a concluding note, again, wanna ace CLAT and join the top NLUs as previously stated. Join our mentorship batches now. So we've already been into 5-6 months of this year, so you have less time in your hands right now. But sure, make most of whatever time you have in your hands left. Prepare hard, and of course, we would love to be a part of the journey. And we are here. We have your backs over there. So looking forward to seeing you in one of the next top NLUs. And yes, enjoy the process. Keep prepping hard. लगे रहो.